If you've been on Roblox for a while, you will know that there are Roblox games that are just iconic and recognizable. Work at a Pizza Place, Natural Disaster Survival, Adopt Me, Jailbreak, the list goes on. What do all of these games have in common? Well, they're all great games for starters. But when I told you these names, what came up in your mind? Was it the thumbnail of the game when it's dominating the front page? Did you think of a memory when you last played the game? These names, Bloxburg, Arsenal, Tower of Hell, are so unforgettable and hold so much weight that millions of players associate positive and negative feelings when thinking about them. So I'll be discussing in this video the key tactics and strategies that these games use to dominate the Roblox front page and how to name your Roblox game. First, when should I name my game? Generally, at any point in developing your game, it is fine to give a title to your game, but there are some reasons why you might want to hold off naming your game until late in development. Early on, when you first start developing your game, you will struggle to find a perfect name that communicates your vision. This is because your game has barely gone through development, and oftentimes, the vision you have for your game will change significantly after testing and actually playing the game. A solid solution to this is to give your game a temporary code name, such as Project Clicking Simulator, Project Adventure Quest, or Project Blue, or any color you want to temporarily give your game, which will give your game an identity without boxing you in. As your game evolves, so will your understanding of what it truly is, and that is when a perfect name just might come to you. Think of it as growing into a name. Sometimes you need to see the game in action, feel its energy, and playtest it before the ideal name comes to mind. Additionally, you will most likely want to get feedback through testing, and if you're working with other people, having a second opinion when it comes to naming something can be very valuable. So doing it towards the end of testing when the core gameplay is unlikely to change will give you more certainty in naming your game. One example you may think of that is similar to real life is how a parent names a child. Now, I've never had a kid, but I imagine that when two people have a baby, the name must be mutual between the partners. So if you're working with a scripter or a builder, you come up with the name together. Also, you can't even name the baby until the gender of the baby is identified, and that's if you want to know the baby's gender or be surprised at birth. All of this can be translated into naming your Roblox game. So now let's discuss ways to make that decision. A name that is easy to pronounce and spell. Simplicity can oftentimes be key. An easy to remember and easy to pronounce name really goes a long way. It enables your game to further spread through word of mouth and basically gives yourself free advertising. Some examples of successful Roblox games with one-word names are Arsenal, Doors, Piggy, and Evade. All single-word names that are easy to pronounce and as a result, easy to talk about. An imaginary example of a game title that is not the best would be something like Chronicles of Illyria. Sounds cool and grand, right? But it's honestly just an absolute mouthful and easy to forget. A game I constantly forget about is Project Lazarus. I've played this game on and off for a few years now, and I love the gameplay, but I literally never remember what it's called. I mean, it honestly seems like they just forgot to take the game's name out of the codename phase. Now I just refer to it as, that one zombie game that's like Call of Duty Zombies, but I forgot what the name is called though. Do you really want people talking about your game like that? I'll give you a common example that everybody has experienced. Think about when you're in school and you have a substitute teacher for the day. The sub does a name call to confirm that everyone is present in the class. She calls Brian, Christopher, Alexander. Then she calls Shell Huang O'Malley Jr. or some exotic sounding name. Not only is that student probably getting picked on, but nobody's going to remember how to spell or even say his name. Getting exposure for your game is hard enough, so it would be wise to not increase that difficulty by having a game name that could be misspelled or mispronounced in a number of ways. The length of your title. While short and sweet might be ideal, some developers choose titles that are longer because they provide an opportunity to convey more about the core gameplay. That being said, there are a few things to consider if you choose to make your title longer. First, the title might not fit into Roblox Discover page and be cut off. Make sure you double check the title limit on every device you want to release on when considering the name for your game. Also, games with longer names oftentimes end up receiving nicknames or acronyms to refer to your game. Some examples of this are SCP-3008 for Secure, Contain, Protect, MM2 for Murder Mystery 2, FNAF for Five Nights at Freddy's, and so on. So consider this and predict how your community may want to abbreviate your longer game name, and make sure it works for you. An imaginary example to think about is a game that is named something like Super Fun Obby Course 3000. It might be descriptive, but it's a lot to type out. Would people abbreviate it to SFOC 3000? Maybe. But Mega Obby might just be easier all around. A descriptive game title. A name that hints at what players will do in your game can be incredibly effective. It sets expectations and can attract the right audience. Some good examples of this are Build a Boat for Treasure, Catalog Avatar Creator, and pretty much all the simulator and tycoon games. Although something to consider is when thinking of the word simulator or tycoon, most players on Roblox just assume the clicker simulator formula or the waiting simulator templates for tycoons, and they wouldn't be wrong to assume that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the game is themed on what the title is. If you hear a title named Texting Simulator, it's pretty clear that that's what you're going to get. A texting-themed clicker simulator. Also, there are plenty of examples of games using the simulator or tycoon keyword and not using the same template that most of the games in the genre use. Vice versa applies as well. There are a lot of games that don't have simulator or tycoon in the title, but do follow the same template or formula. A title that piques the player interest. Another strategy to think about is not to convey what the game is about, but rather convey an emotion through the title of the game. Tower of Hell uses this method successfully. The title does tell you where the game will take place, the tower, but it also makes you think the gameplay must be like being in hell, which conveys an intense emotion. Another great example is Murder Mystery 2. The title quite literally induces mystery in a player when they read the title, all while tying together with a subject that is commonly tied with a suspenseful emotion, murder. Discoverability of your title. Will players be able to find your game name amongst the countless other developers trying to grab the attention of players? What you name your game is also what search terms you are directing players to use to find your game. Some keywords are extremely competitive. This creates a greater challenge in gaining exposure for your game if you're competing for commonly used search terms. One way to lessen this impact is by having a social media presence outside of Roblox. This could be YouTube, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, TikTok, and more. Anime games on Roblox tend to have really strong communities in their Discord servers, and they're a great example of closing the shortcoming of a saturated market with community. Now you're probably thinking, wait, but I know so many games that have thousands of concurrent players that don't follow these rules. That is true. These aren't rules. They're guidelines and generally help the success of your game. And that brings me to my next point. Titles that stand out. Games in this section generally have a bizarre or curious name. Some examples include the Prove Your Mom Wrong at 3 a.m. series by Badass Experience. When you hear that as a player, you sort of can't help but be curious as to what that game is about. Another strategy commonly used is alliteration, basically using the same letter in the beginning of every word in your title. Some examples of this are Horrific Housing, Blade Ball, Murder Mystery 2, and Bad Business. Avoiding future problems. Something you will always want to keep in mind and double check is to be careful on infringing on existing trademarks. Many examples of developers not doing this or choosing to ignore this include when Nintendo took down all Pokemon games, anime games based off My Hero Academia recently being taken down by GameFam, and Bloxbeast being renamed to Bloxfruits. Preventing this outcome is definitely something you will want to seriously look into. Changing the name of your game after launch or after the game is relatively established on the platform will lead to wasted marketing or, in worst case scenarios, your entire game being taken down. How to name sequels to your game. The final piece of advice I want to give you in this video is how to name a sequel or a prequel to your game. The most common and obvious way of doing this is putting the game title along with the sequel number next to it. Some examples of this are Lumber Tycoon 2, Shark Bite 2, and Murder Mystery 2. Now that you understand the importance of naming your Roblox game, apply these insights to create a title that captures the essence of your game and resonates with players. Let me know your thoughts on naming strategies in the comment section, and watch this video on screen if you want more tips on game development in Roblox.